Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Bible in a Year. My name is Natalie, and today we are on day 253. I'm so happy that you're here today. Welcome to the channel. We are going to be reading out of 2 Samuel chapter 15, Ezekiel chapter 9, Mark chapter 8, but only verses 22 through 38 today, and then we're going to close out the day with Psalm 124. So let's get started with 2 Samuel chapter 15. Here we go. After this, Absalom prepared a chariot and horses for himself, and 50 men to run before him. Absalom rose up early and stood beside the way of the gate. When any man had a suit which should come to the king for judgment, then Absalom called to him and said, "What city are you from?" He said, "Your servant is one of the tribes of Israel." And Absalom said to him, "Behold, your matters are good and right, but there is no man deputized by the king to hear you." Absalom said, moreover, "Oh, that I were made judge in the land, that every man who has any suit or cause might come to me, and I would do him justice." It was so that when any man came near to bow down to him, he stretched out his hand, took hold of him, and kissed him. Absalom did this sort of thing to all Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. At the end of 40 years, Absalom said to the king, Please let me go and pray my vow, which I have vowed to Yahweh in Hebron. For your servant vowed a vow while I stayed at Geshur in Syria, saying, If Yahweh shall indeed bring me again to Jerusalem, then I will serve Yahweh. The king said to him, Go in peace. So he arose and went to Hebron. But Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then you shall say, Absalom is king in Hebron. 200 men went with Absalom out of Jerusalem, who were invited, and went in their simplicity, and they didn't know anything. Absalom sent for Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor, from his city, even from Gilo, while he was offering the sacrifice. The conspiracy was strong, for the people increased continually with Absalom. A messenger came to David, saying, The hearts of the men of Israel are after Absalom. David said to all his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, Arise, let's flee, for else none of us will escape from Absalom. Hurry to depart, lest he overtake us quickly and bring down evil on us, and strike the city with the edge of the sword. The king's servants said to the king, Behold, your servants are ready to do whatever my lord the king chooses. The king went out, and all his household after him. The king left 10 women who were concubines to keep the house. The king went out, and all the people after him, and they stayed in Beth-Marak. All his servants passed on beside him, and all the Cherethites, and all the Pelethites, and all the Gittites, 600 men who came after him from Gath, passed on before the king. Then the king said to Attai, the Gittite, Why do you also go with us? Return and stay with the king, for you are a foreigner and also an exile. Return to your own place. Whereas you came by yesterday, should I today make you go up and down with us, since I go where I may? Return and take back your brothers. Mercy and truth be with you. Attai answered the king and said, As Yahweh lives, and as my lord the king lives, surely in that place my lord the king is, whether for death or for life, your servant will be here also. David said to Ittai, Go and pass over Ittai the Gittite passed over, and all his men, and all the little ones who were with him. All the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people passed over. The king also himself passed over the brook Kidron, and all the people passed over toward the way of the wilderness. Behold, Zadok also came, and all the Levites with him, bearing the ark of the covenant of God, and they set down God's ark, and Abiathar went up until all the people finished passing out of the city. The king said to Zadok, "Carry God's ark back into the city. If I find favor in Yahweh's eyes, he will bring me again, and show me both it and its habitation and his habitation. But if he says, I have no delight in you, behold, here I am. Let him do to me as seems good to him." The king said also to Zadok the priest, "Aren't you a seer? Return into the city in peace, and your 2 sons with you, Ahimaaz, your son, and Jonathan, the son of Abiathar. Behold, I will stay at the fords of the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me." Zadok therefore, starting at verse 29. Zadok therefore and Abiathar carried God's ark to Jerusalem again, and they stayed there. David went up by the ascent of the Mount of Olives, and wept as he went up, and he had his head covered, and went barefoot. All the people who were with him each covered his head, and they went up weeping as they went up. Someone told David, saying, "Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom." And David said, "Yahweh, please turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness." When David had come to the top where God was worshipped, behold, Hushai the Archite came to meet him with his tunic torn and earth on his head. David said to him, "If you pass on with me, then you will be a burden to me. But if you return to the city and tell Absalom, I will be your servant, O king, as I have been your father's servant in time past, so I will now be your servant. Then will you defeat for me the counsel of Ahithophel. Don't you have Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, there with you? Therefore, whatever you hear out of the king's house, tell it to Zadok and Abiathar, the priests. Behold, they have there with them their 2 sons, Ahimaaz, Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abiathar's son. Send to me everything that you shall hear by them." So Hushai, David's friend, came into the city, and Absalom came into Jerusalem. And we will find out how that went tomorrow. All right, Ezekiel chapter 9. Then he cried in my ears with a loud voice, saying, "Cause those who are in charge of the city to draw near, each man with his destroying weapon in his hand." Behold, 6 men came from the way of the upper gate which lies toward the north, every man with his slaughter weapon in his hand. One man in the middle of them was clothed in linen, with a writer's inkhorn by his side. They went in and stood beside the bronze altar. The glory of the God of Israel went up from the cherub, whereupon it was, to the threshold of the house, and he called to the man clothed in linen, who had the writer's inkhorn by his side. Yahweh said to him, "Go through the middle of the city, through the middle of Jerusalem, and set a mark on the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry over all the abominations that are done within it." To the others he said in my hearing, "Go through the city after them and strike. Don't let your eye spare, neither have pity. Kill utterly the old man, the young man, the virgin, little children, and women, but don't come near any man on whom is the mark. Begin at my sanctuary." Then they began at the old men who were before the house. He said to them, "Defile the house and fill the courts with the slain. Go out." They went out and struck in the city. While they were killing and I was left, I fell on my face and I cried and said, "Oh Lord Yahweh, will you destroy all the residue of Israel in your pouring out of your wrath on Jerusalem?" And then he said to me, "The iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great, and the land is full of blood, and the city full of perversion. For they say, Yahweh has forsaken the land, and Yahweh doesn't see. As for me, also, my eye won't spare, neither will I have pity, but I will bring their way on their head." Behold, the man in clothed linen who had the inkhorn by his side reported the matter, saying, "I have done as you have commanded me." As for me also, my eye won't spare, and neither will I have pity, but I will bring their way on their head. Again, it gets to a point where God has said, enough. Enough. You all are going to behave this way? Fine. Here we go. Let's go. It's sad to read. It's sad to read, and I do feel times have not changed. Why should they? Mark chapter 8, verse 22 through 38. I have to apologize. I'm having really bad trouble with my vision this morning. I don't know what is going on, but 22 through 38. I am not starting over because you're my friends. And you understand. Okay, here we go. He came to Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to him and begged him to touch him. He took hold of the blind man by the hand and brought him out of the village. When he had spat on his eyes and laid his hands on him, he asked him if he saw anything. He looked up and said, "I see men, but I see them like walking trees." Then again he laid his hands on his eyes, and he looked intently and was restored and saw everyone clearly. He sent him away to his house, saying, "Don't enter into the village, nor tell anyone in the villages." Jesus went out and his disciples into the villages of Caesarea Philippi. On the way he asked his disciples, who do men say that I am?" And they told him, "John the Baptizer, and others say Elijah, but others, one of the prophets." And he said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" And Peter answered, "You are the Christ." He commanded them that they should tell no one about him. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He spoke to them openly. Peter took him and began to rebuke him. But he, turning around and seeing his disciples, rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you have in mind not the things of God, but the things of men." He called the multitude to himself with his disciples and said to them, "Whoever wants to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, and whoever will lose his life for my sake and the sake of the good news will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his life? For what will a man give in exchange for his life? For whoever will be ashamed of me and of my words in the adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man also will be ashamed of him when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. There is a lot there, and that is certainly not a parable. We are not reading between the lines there. And he's talking about two worlds. He's talking about this earthly world, and he is talking about heaven. And he's telling people, you have a choice. You can either suffer in this earth, or you can have peace in heaven. You can't have both. You have to pick one. And Jesus basically saying, if you follow my guidance, if you follow this new covenant, you will lose out here on earth. You will lose your life here on earth. It's not a reference to dying. It's a reference to, losing out on, maybe financial resources. It might be losing out in fun friendships. It may be losing out on a really cool boyfriend. It may be losing out on a really great job. There are things that Jesus wants us to stand up for. He wants us to stand up for love. He wants us to stand up for God. He wants us to stand up for our relationship to Him, our personal relationship to Him. And then He would greet us in heaven. But we can't have both. I'm sorry. I wish I could say we could have both. And then everybody would be happy. There would be no controversy. There'd be no arguing because everybody gets their way. That's not how it works. That's not how it works with Jesus. That's not how it works in our lives. We just don't give of ourselves to people who ignore us and abuse us. So, very, very powerful part of Scripture there. And there is no mistaking what he's saying and trying to dissect a parable. It's all right there. Okay? All right, moving into Psalm 124. And thank God that Jesus came. Because really, if we were supposed to abide by Old Testament law and the law of Moses, in order to receive heaven, none of us would be going. Thank God that He sent Jesus, because His yoke is much lighter. Anyways, Psalm 124. A Song of Ascents by David. If it had not been Yahweh who was on our side, let Israel now say, if it had not been Yahweh who was on our side, when men rose up against us, then they would have swallowed us up alive, when their wrath was kindled against us. Then the waters would have overwhelmed us, the stream would have gone over our soul. Then the proud waters would have gone over our soul. Blessed be Yahweh, who has not given us a prey. Let me start that over, I'm sorry. Verse 6. Blessed be Yahweh, who has not given us as prey to their teeth, or our soul has escaped like a bird out of the fowler's snare. The snare is broken, and we have escaped. Our help is in Yahweh's name, who made heaven and earth. Our help is in Yahweh's name, who made heaven and earth. Oh boy, do I love ending on that. Oh, thank you so much, everyone, for stopping by. I apologize for what is going on with my vision. Just a little take of what goes on behind the scenes. I usually pre-record these videos just in case something like this happens. And I don't have any, I mean, this is it. I have to keep this recording because I don't have any, well, for today, what would be for tomorrow? Anyways. So usually I have like, 4 or 5 videos in bank so that when my injury starts to rear its ugly head, I can just go ahead and, take the day off, let the healing begin again, and, I can just pull one out of the bank. But I don't have one. This is me. This is how it goes some days. I don't know what the pattern is. I've been living with this since 2015. I have tried changing diets. I have tried not wearing makeup. I have tried, oh my gosh, everything. I've cut my hair. I used to have really short hair. I have tried everything. And it's a brain injury. It's going to do what it's going to do. So thank you for your patience. I hope you got the words of Jesus. I hope you enjoyed the history of 2 Samuel. And I especially hope you come back tomorrow for day 254. Have the most fantastic day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.